I would both agree and disagree. I think the idea that science, technology, and the arts can move together separately and that one advances over the other is a nonsense. What I do think, where he's profoundly correct, is if science and technology moved forward without design, without the components that go with other areas of creativity, that's foolish. That won't happen. And the best possible example, I think, is Apple. The Apple products in themselves, technologically, are very superior products. But I would argue that the real differentiator consistently has been design. The consistency of the design, the cleanliness of the design, the insistence on the image of all Apple products, being quite specific. You can't take that away from the technological component. So it is when the four things advance in harmony, you've got success. When one or other of them advances at the expense of another, you will quite likely have failure. It's an interesting question. First of all, I think the advertising industry is something of a phenomenon, and quite right. It is also true to say that Korea has made a huge success, both domestically and internationally, of its creativity, its music, its movies, its television. That's an undoubted success. But I think what people should have to remember is the creative industries are unusual in one important respect, because they carry with them the image of the nation. It's not just, frankly, dollars. It's not just a kind of profit and loss account. You have to add to the profit component the image of the country as a successful, thrusting, ambitious nation. If you remove the concept of Hollywood from the United States, and you say, well, actually, that never happened, you'd have something quite strange. The truth is, for many, many, many years, Hollywood is just a name. Americans don't really mind. American film industry doesn't mind where those movies are made, as long as they're successful. Hollywood is a giant distribution machine, which very successfully promotes and markets movies, some of which are made in America, all over the world. Similarly, Berlin, in the last decade, developed a reputation, certainly within Europe, as being kind of a hothouse for young creative people. The UK at the moment is a hothouse for the special effects business, the games business. So these are not, what's important here is they're not just businesses that are profitable. They also carry with them, I say, the image of a 21st century nation. They also carry with them, which is very, very important, the kind of jobs that young people want. These are really good jobs. They're well-paid jobs. They're attractive jobs. They're satisfying jobs. They're the kind of careers that young people want to be part of. So, in a sense, they carry with them a disproportionate amount of a success factor. So you're going to look at the success in the UK of the cultural industries, creative industries. We are now, I think, creative industries are 7% of all employment, 6% of GDP. You remove the creative industries from the UK at the moment, you're looking at something not very attractive. Oh, very, very much so. I mean, my generation, we made TV commercials. We didn't necessarily make TV commercials because that's what we wanted to be the end of our careers. It was a way of practicing. You know, it meant that somebody else was paying to send celluloid through a camera at a pretty rapid rate and rather expensively, and then get that celluloid processed. So actually we're learning our craft using, if I'm brutal, using the commercials business. Today that's not necessary. I mean, before we started this interview, you were able to take some time switching the cameras on and checking lights and everything else. You could never have done that a few years ago. We would have both been terribly anxious as to how much film was crunching through the camera, whether we could afford it. So yes, it is different. I think that for young people, the more challenging thing is, yes, they can make their programs. What platforms will those programs be shown on, and whether the programs themselves will be platform specific. So, for example, if I was starting out now, I'd be thinking, maybe I could do a series of 100 10-minute films that I could put out on Netflix, and that people could look at in the bus queue in the way in the morning, and maybe I could create a real reputation for the characters in those films, and maybe then someone will come along and order another 500. So I think the notion of platforms and the products themselves, and the content itself, being platform specific is very interesting. The problem, in a sense, you have is we've got the Oscars coming up. We just had the BAFTAs. The ambition of good young filmmakers is, of course, the big screen. I would say probably fewer and fewer of them will realise those ambitions on the big screen, and going to have to become increasingly comfortable with the idea of earning decent livings working on platforms which were not necessarily the thing they had in mind when they started out. I come from it in an entirely different way, which is that the great mistake I think education's made for us, maybe forever, but certainly in the last 30, 40, 50 years, is the purpose of education is to make you outstanding at something that you love. Like to find the thing that you're rather good at and that you enjoy doing, and then educate yourself to a point where you're one of the best people in the world at that. That will give you, for sure, a very satisfying life, probably a quite profitable life, and maybe, as I say, a fantastic career. And I don't think that educationists have ever really understood that. I'm not suggesting for one moment that people shouldn't be literate and numerate and able and articulate, but the idea that you would be placed in a situation where you're not able to optimize your skills or your talents or frankly your love of subject is an absurdity. And I think that sooner or later, probably not in my lifetime, sooner or later educationists the world over will come to exactly that conclusion, that we have spent far too many years creating bored generalists, which is what most education is, bored generalists, rather than trying to find inspired, actually geniuses, if you like, at one or two very specific things. I think the biggest inhibitor is getting enough information, enough knowledge across to parents to understand the sheer breadth of the opportunities that the 21st century is likely to offer their own children. I think, unfortunately, what we've got is a generation of parents still trapped in 20th century educational thinking, when in fact the opportunities of the 21st century are significantly different. And I think that the thing that's going to hold a lot of young people back is the lack of imagination being exercised by their parents, or the lack of information being offered by the schools in terms of what the future offers.